This panel is called Raising Children to be Self-Advocates. And the people who will be participating will be Colleen Payne. She will be our moderator, myself, Shoshana Siegel, Laura Parks, Will Dickey, and a special appearance by Will's father, John Dickey, who we're very happy to have here with us today. So if we could get started, and if you are not on the panel, turn off your camera so that the focus will stay on the panel speakers. Colleen's going to give an introduction to the panel and we're going to get going. Thank you.
Hey everyone, good to join you. So this is about raising children to be their own advocates. And so we know we have made a lot of strides as a society in securing rights for people with disabilities, including people with spina bifida, but those rights are never permanently guaranteed. And sometimes our kids don't realize just how not long ago that those rights were guaranteed. So and on top of that, we have a lot more work to do to make sure that everyone has health care that's available, affordable, and high quality, especially adults. So we need young people to grow up to be able to advocate for themselves, for their own health care, and that includes day-to-day advocacy and also the kind of public policy advocacy we're doing as part of Teal on the Hill. Unfortunately, parenting does not come with a guidebook, and we all do the best we can. But there are ways that we can raise our children to be stronger self-advocates, and we can learn from each other. And to do this kind of policy work that we're doing this week, and there are ways that we can do it to inhibit our kids as well. So it's good to learn both sides. So we have a panel of parents and their children here today who've been down this road, and we are going to talk about what's worked for them and maybe also what hasn't worked for them. So this is going to be a very candid conversation. And I'm going to ask some questions to get the ball rolling, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat and I will try to also bring those up along the way, and we'll try to stay on time. I do just want to point out that we have really tried to cover the lifespan in this. So we have represented a teenager, a young adult, a slightly older adult, and parents on the panel. So do we need to do introductions, Heidi, do you think?
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm Colleen Payne. I have a 17-year-old son who has spina bifida, and I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. How about you, Heidi?
I'm Heidi Siegel, and I am mom to a 19-year-old with spina bifida.
John?
John Dickey, yes, you know my son. We're here in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I'm the older representative.
Will?
Hi, I'm Will Dickey. I'm the previous fellow's offspring, 45-year-old adult living with spina bifida in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Shoshana?
Hi, my name is Shoshana Siegel. I'm a 19-year-old living with spina bifida.
Laura?
My name is Laura. I am this one's mom, so I'll let her introduce herself.
My name's Aubrey, and I'm a 15-and-a-half-year-old with spina bifida.
Awesome. So glad to have everybody here together. So let's start out with, what does it mean to be a self-advocate? So when someone is an effective self-advocate, what does that look like? And maybe also, what does that not look like? Who would like to chip in for that?
Sure, I can start. I think that being a self-advocate means that knowing what issues are worth fighting and what issues, I guess, putting things on a priority list, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can I get through this door? No. But I can get to my classroom, so I can deal with the door because I am still able to go to class, type of thing. I think that being a self-advocate, how do I say this? Is defending yourself and the people with your disability when it's important, and knowing what issues to table for later.
That's good. Anybody else want to add?
I would agree with that. As the elder statesman, I've learned throughout my life that, you know, kind of like what I've said in the beginning about, you know, when you speak with representatives, they generally don't know. And throughout my life, I've learned that people just genuinely don't know about my condition. And that's regardless of whether they're a medical professional or not. You know, I'm sure if I had $1 for every time a medical professional went up to my father and, you know, after a health scare and just kind of went like this, we'd be millionaires. And I've learned that you've got to learn how to advocate for yourself, you know, for anything and everything that's important to you.
I think it's important for, you know, Aubrey's age group to understand that they have a voice, especially in the school setting. To be able to advocate for herself means being a part of the solution. I think a lot of times kids in general, but kids with disabilities feel like stuff is done to them or for them. They don't have a lot of say about medical things that happen early in life. They don't have a lot of say about anything really in the beginning. So understanding as they grow up in the school setting, they need to be present and a part of the solution, whether it's, you know, Shoshana says she couldn't get to her or couldn't get through the door, but can get to the classroom. So, I mean, that is a solution. If she were to say, hey, I can't get through this door, but I'm willing to go this way because it's just as easy or whatever, that's her advocating for herself because she is a part of the decision. So, I mean, I don't want to speak for Aubrey, but I know a lot of her angst and anxiety is because she doesn't feel in control of a lot of situations. She doesn't feel like she gets to have that choice. So making sure to include even early on, making sure they know, I mean, if we're teaching them to be advocates for themselves, they need to understand that their opinion matters and is valued. And sometimes that's impossible, like in a medical procedure, like she is very anti-donating blood.
If it's not donating, they're taking it from me.
So again, it's that feeling of, you know, lack of control. But any opportunity they have to understand that they do have a say. And the school setting is a little easier than the medical facility setting. But when you're so used to things being done for you or to you and told how you have to be or where you have to go, to be part of the solution is, I think, so critical for raising self-advocates.
Yeah, I agree. That's really important. That's a good point. And I would just add, being a self-advocate means you have to know what your rights are in order to advocate for those rights. And so, and that can be hard to find sometimes, you know, what rights do you have through the ADA, through IDEA? And so once you know what those rights are, you can be a better advocate and you know the route to go for it. And I think another aspect that my son has a challenge with is when to ask for help. He sort of feels like being independent and being a self-advocate means doing it on his own all the time, but advocacy includes asking for help when you need it. And that's an important skill to learn. I'm gonna keep going with questions, but if you have something else to add, just chime in, please. So for the parents, when you were a young parent just starting out, what do you wish you had known then that you know now as it relates to raising a strong advocate? John, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, you know, Laura, I don't know what it was like, or kind of what the doctors told you immediately after birth. But back in the Stone Age, it was if your child lives much past 1.5 to 3 years, you're gonna be lucky. There will be nothing from the waist down that's controllable, and they painted this bad picture. And a lot of parents took their advice. Some of the doctors, even in South Carolina, now were saying, just give them to the nuns, and they'll take care of them. Jean and I had a mother like you. I mean, a wife like you. She was fierce, okay? And we started right after that saying, well, look, you know, if we can't do anything, we're going to love him every day. We're not going to withhold any of them. And if they're wrong, then we're going to discipline the same as we did with Juliet. And that love and reciprocal notion, and especially with Will's personality, you know, he was always a fighter. So we kind of like, the doctors would tell us, you know, when it comes to other opinions, I'm going to ask the mother, and she's going to tell me what the child is like, because she is the only one that knows what the child is. So we modeled, okay, Jean more than I, because she was around, but we modeled that advocacy. Now, had I wished I had known much more? No, you know, we didn't expect anything. But I had a wife who was into medicine, and if it was on the journals, she was in those journals. She was talking to doctors. She found spina bifida clinics when they were getting started, and she just stayed in the hunt. That is really the only thing I would have to say is just do that as a start, okay? And your child, you'll learn what your child can and can't do. We never told Will he couldn't do anything. Never. Hopefully we never telegraphed to him that he was disabled. Disabled sometimes is more up here than in the bodies. There's exceptions, okay? And that's what we have to do. And we'll get into that with some of the other questions. Yes, ma'am. Heidi, did you want anything?
Oh, no, I was just gonna chime in. So I was not necessarily a young parent. I was older when I had Shoshana, but it was still kind of in the dark ages of the internet to some degree. We didn't have everything on our phone. And so when she was born, is when we found out she had spina bifida in that moment in the C-section room. And I relied on literally my obstetrician going home at night and photocopying pages from books about what spina bifida was. And that's kind of where we were. And so there's a lot that I didn't know, but sometimes I'm okay with that because I'd rather have had just, and I was a solo parent by choice at the time, just have mine and Shoshana's course figured out as we went along instead of living in fear. And we met her first neurosurgeon when she was 5 days old. And he told me, take her home, make her strong, and I'll see you in 3 months, and don't kid glove her. And I think that has always been the best advice I ever got because I've never kid gloved her from day one. And just kind of going back to asking for help, and I think it was Laura who said something about asking for help. And I came up in the gay and lesbian advocacy movement, and there would be no gay rights today if we didn't depend on our allies. We weren't safe in schools or at work until our parents and our friends spoke up. We are a movement that survived a health epidemic and other things because of the helpers, the people who were our voice. And I think that's important for every group. And I know sometimes, and we'll probably talk a little bit about this in this session, some members of our spina bifida community feel that sometimes parents overstep their boundaries. And I 100% agree with that because I see it every day on especially social media. But also remember, there is a role for everybody in the community that sometimes individuals might not have a voice or have the resources. So be it a parent, a medical provider, a teacher, like Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers. And I think that's some of the best advice, whether it was given to me directly or not, but just something I understood from the beginning is find your people and rely on them. And it teaches your kids too, that it's okay to go out and seek resources and build community.
We're all interdependent. That's right. I think in the beginning, I thought that being an advocate was being a mama bear. And that's kind of what I saw. Because I didn't know what my son's rights were. I didn't know what my rights were. I didn't know how to be a self advocate. And so I didn't do this, but just yelling at people, sometimes you get what you need. But I had to learn how to be a self advocate. And then I realized I had to also teach my son how I had to learn how to be an advocate for him. And then I had to teach him those same skills because he wasn't born knowing these things, just like I wasn't. And so I think I was surprised along the way to learn that just because he has spina bifida doesn't mean that he knows anything about it. He had to learn it just like I had learned it. So I think that's something that maybe I would have started sooner. And Kylie had asked here about like ages when this kind of advocacy started to introduce your kids to topics. And so we'll try to sprinkle that in with these questions as well. So what was your approach for the parents? What was your approach to parenting? We talked about this a little bit, but if you have anything to add, what do you think you did right about raising a kid to be a self-advocate? And what do you think you could have done differently?
I'd like to share a couple stories about that. Before Shoshana was born, I had kind of committed to this parenting technique called attachment parenting, which is co-sleeping, carrying the baby around, things like that. And also this idea of positive parenting, which is instead of saying, don't touch the stove, you say, if you touch the stove, you'll get burned. It's just a whole thing of not saying no all the time. And it was really self-preservation for me because, like I said, I was on my own. And unrelated to spina bifida, one day I was picking Shoshana up from preschool. She was around 3.5, and we're in the parking lot. And I'm asking her, do you want to go have sandwiches for dinner or pizza? And this mom came over to me, another overbearing Jewish mother. One Jewish mother meeting another Jewish mother, and said to me, I overheard you talking to your kid. And I just can give you, and her kid was a little older. I'm going to give you some advice. You're going to regret giving her all these, like, it was something like the power to make these choices. And it was like so weird. And I was like, whatever, mind your own business. Maybe told her to F off because that's me. And then I kept going. And I remember thinking about it that night while we were sitting in the pizza place that Shoshana chose, and we were having a grand old time because when people are 3 years old, they climb all over the tables or whatever. And I remember thinking, like, of course I'm going to ask her what she wants to eat, because why am I going to pay for the two of us to go to a restaurant for her to throw a fit and not eat? And I think that is part of just that approach to parenting I've had is we're in this together. And Shoshana's my now former wife didn't come into her life permanently until she was 6 years old. So it was really us in the beginning. And if we didn't agree on what we were going to eat, much less we didn't agree on a healthcare choice, it was just going to be a nightmare. So why not always work together? And I always tease Shosho and say she's my ride or die and that, but it really had to be us together. And that was kind of my approach, is that we would do everything at all times together. And that kind of taught her to have a voice, be it about dinner or about the major life decisions that she's had to make in the last 5 years regarding her health, and she's made them.
That's great. Laura or John, do you have anything to add about techniques that you've used as parents and your approach?
I agree with Heidi. I'm sure Aubrey will agree with the mama bear approach, which
I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
well, probably I have had to learn to back off and allow her some of those choices. I should have done it. You heard her, to be stupid and make mistakes. But she and I talk about it quite often that with her, the stakes are higher. And, that may not be fair. She has a brother that is only 1.5 years older than her. And there are a lot of equalities as far as expectations and chores that need to be done around the house and things, which that's one of those things as a parent of a kid with spina bifida, they need to have the exact same expectations when it comes to their roommate status in the household. Meaning, if you are a roommate, you are not going to leave your dishes on the table. If you do, your roommate's going to yell at you and your apartment's going to stink. So if you're a roommate, you need to clean up after yourself in the bathroom, regardless of whether that is a little bit more involved because you have a bowel flush routine that you have to do nightly. It's still your responsibility to clean up the bathroom. So make sure as that parent that you are expecting those chores to be done by all your children equally. But as
Much
far
to
as
your child's dismay.
yes,
But
but that idea of if you let them fail, if you're not that helicopter parent, if you let them fail, are the stakes going to come back to haunt you? Because they are high. If I don't do my due diligence of, hey, did you take your PMEDs? Hey, did you remember to cath? Did you remember? And am I a little controlling about that stuff? Yeah. Now that she's 15, I've learned to back off a little bit.
and I've gotten better with handling it ish.
So a lot of that, I think parents parent out of fear a lot. But as they grow and they get bigger and you realize, no, in fact, they are just a normal kid that's going to buck you like a normal kid. The parenting gets a little easier as they mature and grow and understand that the stakes are high. And while you can test me on certain things, your health is not one that I will back down on. So for us, we've kind of met in the middle with what she can.
I know
test.
what I can buck and what I absolutely can't.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
stakes are high and I think our approaches are a little different in that sense that, they are high, but it's not in my control.
That's true.
There are consequences, and Shoshana has suffered some consequences because she pushed the limits too far, but that's her body. And this is again, my other radical life of being that feminist of, it's her body, her choice, and it's kind of letting go. And, and I'm speaking from my perspective that how, it's a little different. And for me, a lot of my time over the last few years as finding that letting go and letting her go and make those mistakes is I've done a lot of work of letting go of my maternal guilt too.
Well, I think you make a very
Control
good
comes
point.
from that.
Katie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of that also, we've learned from experience and through the experience of others and good friends that you can do everything right.
Mhm.
And there still may be consequences. There still may be stuff that happens that is not within your control. And so is it worth sweating the small stuff? Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is going to happen. And sometimes it's unexplained. And sometimes you end up in the hospital regardless of whether you do everything right. I think we've all had those experiences. I know Will has of I did everything right, but then I got COVID or this happened and it was not within my control. So
I got a back infection.
understanding that from the beginning, if you can go ahead and grasp those younger parents, knowing that, like you said, Heidi, that mom guilt, sometimes it's unavoidable. And sometimes you got to put that down because it's going to happen.
Well, excuse me. Well, we are lucky with Will. His opening was rather small, rather low. His complications are never as bad as anybody else's that I see on the screen. Okay. But when you raise that child, that goes into the discipline. Will always had chores around the house. Okay. We had urinary protocols we went through. We had bowel management protocols we went through. He was very compliant through all that stuff. He seemed to understand them. Our concern, because our medical needs really were small, was preparing him to go out into a world where he looked with his pants on and we didn't see the leg involvement. Yeah. Yeah, I thought, oh wow. I saw
Please
the
keep your
smile.
pants on,
Yeah,
Will.
okay.
Please
I'm
keep your
sorry.
pants on, Will.
I'm sorry. My-
Mr. Dickey, we don't need this. There's
But-
children in the
but,
room.
but he had to experience failures. He had to. We would advise, and if he screwed up, and he suffered the consequences. Okay. Medically, he did everything right. I think it's going to come down a little later. My biggest thing was just holding off on the colostomy surgery. I always had a fear of the knife because that was instilled in me with the neurosurgeons, you know. But that keeping up with the technology that goes with being the nice mama bear, the lady who knows it and will just silently look at you and smile, meaning I'll cut your head off if you don't do it my way, you know, to the doctors. That we instill that with him. And again, we're lucky, upright and mobile, you know, one shunt revision ever. So yeah, anyway, that's all I want to say.
And this keeps going, this goes directly into our next question, which is how do you start building self-advocacy skills from the beginning as it relates to healthcare? Because really we talk about independence and self-advocacy together because they just flow into each other. And so I know that there are often power struggles between parents and especially teenagers, just in general. But when you add spina bifida and cathing and bowel programs and everything, those power struggles become really, really difficult because the stakes are high. So let's talk about in healthcare, how have you involved your children from the beginning, or for the kids? How have you been involved? Because, you know, I know from a young age, I would want to involve my son in his medical appointments, but he didn't realize how little time we had with that specialist. And he would, you know, the neurosurgeon would say, do you have any questions for me? And he would ask a question about the parking lot or something. And I'm like, hey, we got real questions to ask here. So we had to start preparing in advance together how to ask those questions. Are there any other ways you found to get your kid involved in their healthcare?
Shoshana, you
I want to say something, but I don't know how to say it in a nice way.
say it.
Say it.
You kind of gotta force them, I guess. I don't know how to say that in a different way, but you just gotta make them do it. Like,
I've been
The way-
kicked out of our hotel. Sometimes it feels at the hotel we're there so much.
Yes.
The hospital room and the doctor's office. Because, you know, I was asking too many questions. So we've gotten to the point, right, where we kind of go over our list in the car and we come up with the questions. And now that Shoshana's older, I always ask permission in the doctor's office if I can speak. So I kind of force her to speak.
but she's been doing that for a while, to be fair. So
Yeah, that's kind of how Dad and I have always worked. I was always raised ultimately to go by myself and be independent. But still to this day, I'm guilty in corralling him to go to certain ones just to have some backup, just in case. But it, like he said, they've raised me to be ultimately independent. But you know, I still, when push comes to shove, I still fall back on my parents.
But that's good. But that's
we-
good for everybody. That's not just about the relationship between you and your dad or us and our children. Because when I first had Shoshana and I was on my own, I brought my mom to every one of Shoshana's appointments because I needed another set of ears. Because when you're emotional, you're not hearing what they're saying. You're only hearing that 1% don't survive, right? You're not hearing 99% survive. So when you're the patient, sometimes be it your dad or your spouse or a friend or someone, just having someone else on the phone. And during COVID, it was hard because they would only let one person in the room. But my ex-wife and I, we always put the other on the phone, and Shoshana would get mad because she was like, I don't want everyone in the room. And we were like, we need to hear it. So that's okay. And that's advocacy and asking for help. That all goes back together. So we're not going to judge you because you're a middle-aged man bringing your daddy to your appointments, but
And
it's
let me
important.
add-
That's part of good healthcare.
Let me amplify what he's saying a little bit. When I go, I just make sure and I listen. And when we get out of the room, we'll talk.
Mhm.
Sometimes parlor talk is a little receptive, when it filters through. So I just want to make sure he understands it, and it's his decision. It is his right to exist the way he wishes to exist.
I
Within
just
reason.
wanted, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I wanted to answer a question that was in the chat real quick, if that's okay.
Mhm.
AJ asked what helped me achieve my independence and learn to maintain my health. And to put this in the most delicate way possible, my mom let me make mistakes. And ultimately, in the end, I've lost literal limbs because I have made mistakes. I've not like major limbs, like toes, but like you can, but I've also learned that, like you guys said, you can do everything right. You can keep your environment so clean. You can make sure you're taking your antibiotics. You can make sure you're doing your wound care every day, even though you don't want to. And you still might get that infection again. And you still might end up in the hospital again. And in the moment, it's so frustrating because you're like, what did I do? I've done everything right. And you're so frustrated because you're just stuck there again. But to like achieve independence, you have to be forced into it. You have to make those mistakes, because without making those mistakes, you're not going to like learn how to handle when bad things happen in your health, in your life.
Yeah.
Well, I think from just backing it up even more for even, younger kids. I mean, one of the things I did with Aubrey is she checked herself in to every single appointment from about 8 or 9 on. I'm like, it's not my appointment. You check yourself in. And she would get annoyed at me. She's like, I'm like, it's not my appointment. Like, you're going to be doing this the rest of your life. Might as well start now. And so now she knows it doesn't matter if it's the dentist or if it's an SB related doctor.
I still won't at the dentist.
She wheels up, she'll give them her name and check herself in. And, inevitably they look over her head to me. It's like, are you mom? That's beside the point.
When it's at Duke or Lennox Baker, they all know me so well that when I walk in, I don't even have to say anything.
Sure.
The next
It's
step
not-
is making your own appointments, Aubrey, and that's what
Yep.
Shoshana started doing. And in the beginning, she didn't like to do it, so I would just
Sucks.
be.
I don't like doing it
We
now.
would like three-way call from different rooms, or I would be just next to her on the speaker and be like, okay, now give them your date of birth here, and teaching her how to do it, but making her own doctor's appointments. And now she's 6 hours, 7 hours away from me, and she has to do it. She has to go to the pharmacy and get her own prescriptions, pick them up. So, those are just those little steps every step of the way.
I wanted to give one example of how we have done this with the age breakdown for Nate, and then I want to be cognizant of our time. But so when Nate was 9, his dad and I and the doctors had decided it was time for him to do the maze, that this was probably the best thing for him. And we wanted to wait until he could be involved in the decision making, but also we knew that he was 9, and we realized that 9-year-olds can't make 9-year-olds don't make great decisions. And so we could either wait for him to catch up to this, or we could help him through the process. And so I'm not saying this is right for everyone, but this is how we did it. So I explained to him what the maze procedure was. and why we thought it was good for him, but what the challenges were as well as a surgery. And so I asked him what concerns and questions he had about this. And his concerns were completely different than mine. His concerns were, will it hurt? So I explained anesthesia, because he's had it before, but you have to explain things over and over again. He didn't want the gas mask, and I took that seriously, and we talked about that. And so he would rather get sedation through IV than with a gas mask. And he asked if he could get a new stuffed animal from the gift shop for having a surgery. And I said yes. So we took those things seriously in pre-op. We talked to anesthesiologists about getting sedation through IV instead of the gas mask. We talked about pain management, and he heard me taking all of those things seriously, and he had input into the decision. By the time he was 15, his stoma closed, and he either needed a revision or a button placed. By this time, he was completely independent with his MACE. And so I had a decision that I thought I would make in that situation, but I didn't say it. And I asked him what he wanted to do, and he had the opposite decision. But it made sense. He told me why he thought that was the best option. I brought up counterpoints. He still wanted to do it. And so at that point, he was able to do it. But you have to know your child and what they are capable of doing and assume competence and just involve them seriously and genuinely in the decision making and take their words seriously. Shoshana, there was a question for you in the chat about, can you discuss your recent move to go away to college and what new things have you learned about self-advocacy being on your own?
I've learned a lot of things, but I don't know how much of them are spina bifida related, to be honest.
Then you
Uh,
have
yeah.
experienced college. That's perfect.
You've dealt with your advocacy. Think about it.
I have, yes, but I was doing that in high school, and it just kind of, at a certain point in high school, it was like, okay, you can come to the 504 meeting, but I'm talking, and if you talk, I'm gonna get mad at you, so don't talk.
That
But
started in middle school.
yeah, it did actually. I was raising a self-advocate means you talk back a lot. Oops. But
Yeah.
so I was like doing that in high school, but in college it's different. It's like you'll get a new professor and you'll say, I have something called executive dysfunction. Sometimes I have to email you and I need you to give me like weirdly specific instructions because I cannot do your work if
Yes.
you don't.
I'm a
Like,
freshman in high school and still do that. Like, do that.
you do it for the rest of your life, basically. But
I've done that since middle school.
Yeah.
and you explain like the issues you have, because if you don't tell them, they don't know. And then when you can't do that assignment and you didn't tell them you had a problem, that's your fault because you couldn't like speak up for yourself. That is your fault. And you can't blame it on them. And sometimes like I'll have to send an email and I'll be like, mommy, like, please help me write the email. I still do that. Especially when I'm mad and I write an email, I'll be like, I need you to write the email for me. It's not going to be nice if I do it, type of thing.
That's when you type it and then you walk away. Don't send it. You walk away. You come back to it later and go,
And
"Ooh,
delete half of it.
yeah, I shouldn't have said that." Rein it in a little bit.
I want to make sure we get to this particular question and then we can follow up with anything else. But so engaging in public policy advocacy. So we've been talking about day-to-day advocacy, but public policy is intimidating for adults, let alone children. So how have you prepared children to do this kind of advocacy, and why is it important for them to do it?
So I think just getting them involved at a young age is amazing. We have weekly meetings and it's not unusual for me to see Laura and Aubrey sitting like that. And it's been that for a couple of years now. And I think just having the children in the room, if they're not ready to speak, starts to teach them how to do it. There's no wrong way to advocate for yourself or to advocate for SBA and do what we're doing over the next couple of days. So just, encouraging them is one of, I told this story yesterday, and, it really was the moment that changed our lives. And it was walking into the hotel in Washington, DC. And, Shoshana got,
A big part of it is, for context, I had this idea in my head. I was fully ambulatory, but I wasn't supposed to be. Like, it was causing problems for me. But I had this idea in my head that if I sat down in a wheelchair, I'd never be able to get up. Like, I don't, looking back, I'm not sure why, but I was convinced. Sorry, Mama.
no, I know, you talked about it often.
Yes. So it was like life changing, because I saw all these people and I saw them getting up and I was like, you're allowed to do that? Like that's allowed? Like, and I was like, okay. When we got home, all right, I'll get fitted for the wheelchair, but I'm not using it all the time, like, type of thing.
Well,
I
I
think
think
that-
you bring this really great point about how important it is to get kids around other kids and adults with spina bifida, and how much that normalizes and raises self-esteem. And you realize there are other people like me, and people should listen to us too. We are also people. Look at all of us. And I think that really helps people advocate for themselves on a daily basis. And then you have other people to advocate for legislatively.
Mhm.
And just if I can, this is a personal pet peeve of mine that I see, but I think it helps, we always have to model good behavior for our kids. So, and it's something I've learned over the years, and it's to kind of take out all of that enmeshment and enabling behavior. So we have never had neurosurgery. We have never had to be admitted to the hospital. I will never share Shoshana's scar pictures on the internet or with people. And it's just creating that boundary of what our roles are, and just taking the we out of it, I think also starts to teach kids that they have a voice, and it's only their story to tell. If you caught on to this early on, I could have said Shoshana had to have see, I can't even say it, like, I just won't, Shoshana had to have some major surgeries in the last couple of years, and explain what they are. It's not for me to tell, and it's
Yeah,
for
and
her
for-
to tell. So
And
that's
for
how you,
context, like, even when I am in the hospital, she'll still ask me, she'll be like, I know you had the surgery a couple days ago, but can I take a photo of you? Can I share this on Facebook? And I'll be like, not today, not yet. I'm not ready for that. And she'll be like, okay, fine. And then 2 days later, she'll ask again, and I'll be like, yeah, you know what? Now we can. And it's like giving autonomy, I guess.
And respect.
Yeah.
What about Laura and Aubrey? How have you all found how to get involved in advocacy, and what the benefits have been for Aubrey?
I don't think it was ever an option. I mean, she's been involved by default, literally from minute one.
From
We
second one.
we started a support group, which was for me, looking for support, because I realized what we all have learned is while yes, there's 166,000 of us, that's in the whole country. So there might be 5 in my area, and they could range all ages. So to find support, for me, we started a support group when she was less than 6 months old, and started, that was in conjunction with one of her therapists, her physical therapist. And so it just grew from there until we became a chapter with the SBA. But Aubrey she really doesn't know any different. And it's probably not necessarily right, but Aubrey was the first at Duke and the first on the East Coast to have the magic rods. And so there was a lot of publicity around her, and she raised a lot of money as a Duke patient rep. So she was put in the spotlight from 7 years.
From 7 years old to now.
7 until now. I mean, Donna Jones is like, everybody knows Aubrey. Well, everybody knows Aubrey because she was the first at Duke. And And
Ever.
she was the cute little girl that went through this. And I
I'm
mean,
sorry,
she's
was.
she's on YouTube and she's on, and that was my background as a teacher. And I wanted to teach the world about spina bifida and everything because I realized nobody knew. And I don't want to say Aubrey was a platform, but she was for Duke. She was or is for Duke. She is for the SBA, and trying to get her to understand that the power that position holds as far as her ability to do great things. She sees me, participate in the walk and roll every year. She sees the passion that I have for this community and making lives better and advocating that way. Is it right? Will she hate me later for putting her in the spotlight all the time?
Probably not.
She just doesn't know any different. And so that's one of those things. I mean, it helps that I am not an introverted person, in case y'all didn't know. So when they called me up and said, hey, they being Duke or whoever going, hey, can you do this? And I'm like, sure. Yeah. Why not?
NC State going, hey, come to this dance marathon.
Yeah, I mean, we were on the dance
Or-
marathon circuits for years, which means we went to every dance marathon that supported Children's Miracle Network. And Aubrey was front and center with her picture up on the screen. And they walk, she wheels in and everybody already knows who she is. And so we went through a period of, I don't want to talk. I don't want to be on stage. And I think we're through that now because I had to back off, because it was me shoving her front and center going, nope, you're going to do this. And she's like, I don't want to do this. Now she's coming out of that and understanding the attention can be used in a positive light for good and recognizes the power. Would you agree with that? Yeah. But there were several years, like Aubrey has never been one that felt. She has been a strong advocate for herself from the very beginning. I know most of you have heard the story of her picking a bathing suit that
dear
I
God.
did not think.
Again?
It's a good story.
Everyone here has heard it at least 5 times.
Okay, look, there's like 97 people on
Oh.
the call. But, she was 10 or 11 and she picked a bathing suit that at the time, she had not had her Mace and Atrophenoff surgery. So she was still in diapers and
It was a really cute one piece.
wearing a swim diaper. And this bathing suit was going to be, everybody was going to know she was wearing a swim diaper. And I pointed that out to her. I was like, hey, are you sure this is the suit you want? Because everybody's going to know at 11 years old that you're wearing a diaper. And she looked right at me and she goes, and like, I need a diaper to be able to swim in the pool. Like, that is not a big deal. I don't know why you're worried about it. And it was literally like a figurative smack in the face to me, because I understood from that point on that I was the one that was judging, being biased, being, whatever that
Making it
was,
more than it was.
making it a thing. And I was like, oh, she doesn't think it's a thing. She says, I need a swim diaper to be able to swim like everybody else. People can get over it if they have a problem with it. And I was like, if only I could have this child's confidence. That was 5 years ago. 5 years ago. And now no. But is it because of who she is? And I mean, I don't take credit for that. I'm the one that tried to squash it by accident. That's just her.
Well, there are some
Trying to
amazing
squash it,
self-advocates in this group and amazing allies in this group. So I know our time is up. Does anybody have any last words? John, do you have any words of wisdom for us parents?
The dumbest ones here. No, everybody is important. Everybody can contribute. And the more we educate, the better we are. And it's good that we can have different age groups here. And maybe some of the younger will learn from some of the older. But Laura, I got to tell you that he was a self-starter in all this stuff. So, yeah, it depends on personality, it depends on medical involvement, and it really depends on whether we tell the kids they're disabled or not. Will, one day, we were riding a log flume someplace in the United States, and Will just out there, he was in AFOs at the time. He just asked me right out of the blue, when did you get out of your AFOs?
I love it.
You know, so in a way, I patted Gene and myself. And that's what we need to see. But at the same time, they need to be willing to sit down with the teachers and go through their own IEPs if possible, and stand up and ask for help. And so far, everything we've ever asked for. And I wish Jean was alive to talk to you, because she's really the one that needs to present all the details. I came in last and said, yeah, that's good. Okay.
Be good. I just want to share something because John shared something just as we wrap up. And I was surprised Shoshana didn't say this because she usually uses this as her criticism of Heidi's parenting story. But when she was little and it was just the two of us, we went to Disney like once a month or twice a
Oh,
month
yeah.
all the time. And she would want to walk. And so she'd get out of her stroller, and then she always fell, right? Because she had the AFOs and she had the valgus.
Could
and
you
she
not
would
say
fall.
it like that, please?
Well, she would, I mean, you're in a room of 90 people who fall down all the time. And so I would keep walking and I'd be like, come on, let's go, get up. And like all of Disney, oh my God. And people would run to get up, but don't touch her. She's got to get up. She's got to get up. And I would tell people, if I picked her up every time she fell, I'd need back surgery. And we would never get to the small world. So she needs to go, go, go. And now she falls. And my dad has caught her on the ring because she's living up at his home. And once he was at my house and he caught her on the ring falling. And he's like, oh my God, she's on the ground. And I'm like, she'll get up. And again, worst mom, I'm the worst daughter, worst mom in his eyes, because I'm just like, she'll get up, she'll get up. I mean, you can't pick them up all the time. And whether that is literally or figuratively, I think that's some of the best advice you can get is just stop picking the kids up and let them figure it out on their own. And just catch them.
I know we have to go, but to
have
piggyback
a
on
couple
that story,
stories.
no, real quick. I was substitute teaching
Oh,
in her class
this
at
one.
school, and she flipped her chair on the playground while we were coming in. She had to come in a different way than the rest of the class
And
went.
it was not really wheelchair friendly.
She didn't show up to class. She didn't show up. I mean, this was 4th grade, and I was getting annoyed. I'm like, she should have been here by now. Well, one of the other subs came in and was in a panic. She's like, oh my God, Aubrey flipped her chair on the playground. And I was like, okay, is she okay? And she, well, yeah, and I'm like,
I finally got back in the classroom and she went, what the heck, man? Where have you been?
well, so the point of this story is she was getting ready to graduate from physical therapy. She had met all her goals. They're like, I don't know what we're going to work on anymore. She wheels into physical therapy the next week. And I was like, I've got a goal. And her therapist was like, what? I was like, I need you to dump her. And she's like, what? I was like, I need you to flip her out of her chair and teach her how to get back in. I said, because that executive function, she thought she was helpless. I was like, why did you not get up? Like, you're strong enough to unbuckle, flip your chair over, climb back in. Like, what was the problem?
I'm sorry, 38-pound chair for a 4th grader?
Whatever, you figured it out. So it was the same thing though. Her PT's like, I love it, let's do it. And we literally wheeled her into the gym full of mats and just dumped her out of her chair. And I was like, okay, now step by step, let's figure this out. So yeah, you're not a bad mom, Heidi.
No, I know.
They got to get back up.
Hardcore moms and some hardcore kids here.
Gotta go. Small world's waiting. Let's go.
She rushes me. I don't like it. I just sit there for a minute. I kind of take a nap sometimes. I'm like, all right, I'll be here for a minute.
I'll
Bye.
step over. I'll keep going around the house. I'll step over. I don't care.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Enjoyed it.